The movie Shawshank Redemption is a narrative told by Ellis Red Reddington about the story of Andy Dufresne. Andy Dufresne is a young banker who is sent to Shawshank prison on a life sentence for allegedly killing his wife and her lover. When Andy first gets to Shawshank, he meets Red, who is the man on the inside who can get things from the outside. He goes to Red and asks him for a rock hammer. A rock hammer is a little 6-inch hammer that is used for chiseling or shaping rocks. During a work project, Andy overhears a guard discussing inheritance that he is soon to receive from his brother and how Uncle Sam is going to tax it very hard and he doesn't think he's going to get very much of it. Andy goes to him and asks him if he trusts his wife. At first, the guard is really upset that Andy would ask something like this until Andy explains. Andy explains to the guard that he can receive the money tax-free if he puts it in his wife's name as a gift. Other guards overhear this advice and start going to Andy for financial advice. The warden hears about this and brings Andy in to help him keep track of money that he's laundering from using inmates as forced labor and receiving bribes. Andy is investing this money for the warden by creating a fictional person and setting up fake accounts for the money and telling the warden that he did this so that the money could not be traced back to him. But in reality, Andy is doing this so that when he gets out of prison, he can take the warden's money. Over the years, new people come to the prison. One of the new prisoners is a young man named Tommy Williams, who claims that when he was in another prison doing time, his cellmate was a man who told him a story about killing a rich man with his lover who was already married to a young banker. Tommy immediately knows that this is about Andy Dufresne's wife and realizes that Andy really is innocent. Andy tells the warden this information and the warden denies Andy another trial. Andy then calls him obtuse, and the warden is very upset by this and sends Andy to 1 month in solitary confinement and also orders for Tommy Williams to be killed. When Andy gets out of solitary, he is fed up with the warden and starts thinking about his future. He goes and tells Red that in Buxton there is a field with a lot of rocks and an oak tree at the north end. And right by the oak tree there is a rock that has no business being there, and it's different from all the other rocks, and underneath it he buried something, and for Red to go dig it up if he ever gets out. No one knows what this means, and they suspect that Andy is thinking about killing himself because he asked for 6 feet of rope earlier that day. That same night, he's working late in the warden's office, and the warden asks him to shine his shoes. Andy steals the shoes and a suit from the warden and walks back to his cell wearing the warden's shoes, hoping that no one would notice, and nobody did. Andy has spent the last 20 years of his life in prison digging a hole or a tunnel to escape from prison, and no one knows about it. That night, he escapes. He crawls through 500 yards of waste, feces, and other sewage to freedom. When he gets to the outside, he goes to the bank and opens up the fake accounts and takes all the warden's money and flees the country. Red also gets out on parole, and he goes to Buxton and digs up the box under the oak tree underneath the rock that has no business being there, and inside the box that was buried there is a letter to him saying where Andy is and money for him to get there. Red takes the money and goes to meet Andy where he is at. Andy is on a beach on the Pacific Ocean in Mexico. They see each other and start walking towards each other, and you know they're going to start a pretty good life. This story told to us by Red teaches us that overcoming obstacles and persevering can pay off in the end.